Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 10th of June 2018 and the 3rd of Ba'una 1734 AM. I'm Mira Gerges. In today's headline, Khamenei orders uranium enrichment preparations as Iran nuclear deal unravels. Amnesty International says US-led strikes on Raqqa may be war crimes. Jordan's Prime Minister steps down after protests. Gaza militants fire rockets towards Israel. Anger in Israel after Argentina calls off football match. Nipah death toll rises, but end of outbreak is near. Hope Solo says 2026 World Cup should not be awarded to United States. But first to Iran, where the country's supreme leader has ordered preparations to begin increasing uranium enrichment, ramping up pressure on European states struggling to keep the Islamic Republic in a nuclear accord. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei was quoted saying by Iranian state media saying, "The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran is duty-bound to prepare the ground for achieving 190,000 SWUs." He said that the increase would be within the framework of the JCPOA for the time being, referring to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, otherwise known as the Iran Nuclear Accord. Bahruz Kamalvandi, spokesman for Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, said his country intended to inform the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency. Preparations began on Tuesday. To Syria now. And airstrikes by the US-led coalition in Raqqa probably breached international humanitarian law and potentially amount to war crimes, according to a report by Amnesty International. The rights group accuses the coalition of killing and injuring thousands of civilians in attacks that were at times disproportionate or indiscriminate. During its offensive to flush ISIS militants from their de facto capital. Amnesty's senior crisis response advisor, Donatella Rivera, said, "The coalition's claims that its precision air campaign allowed it to bomb ISIS out of Raqqa, while causing very few civilian casualties, do not stand up to scrutiny. On the ground in Raqqa, we witnessed a level of destruction comparable to anything we've seen in decades of covering the impact of wars." The report, called War of Annihilation, details the loss of civilian life in Raqqa, based on interviews with 112 civilians at the sites of 42 coalition airstrikes. It illustrates the cases of 4 civilian families who, between them, lost 90 relatives and neighbors, including 39 from one family alone. A spokesman for the US-led coalition fighting ISIS slammed the report, saying Amnesty never approached the Pentagon about its findings and was out of line for suggesting the coalition has violated international law. Speaking to reporters at the Pentagon via a video briefing from Baghdad, Colonel Thomas Vale said, "They are literally judging us guilty until proven innocent. That's a bold rhetorical move by an organization that fails to check the public record or consult the accused." Jordan's government has stepped down after 5 days of nationwide protests against new austerity measures. Prime Minister Hani al-Malki, who took office last year, met with King Abdullah II before resigning, the Royal Hashemite Court announced on Monday. According to government-run newspaper Arai, Education Minister Omar Aziz has been named interim Prime Minister. Demonstrators, spurred by tax hikes and subsidy cuts, had called on the Prime Minister to step down. Since the strike began last Wednesday, thousands had poured onto the streets of the capital Amman and several other cities. A sea of protesters had been gathering outside al-Malki's office at night, after the breaking of the Ramadan fast at dusk. Images of burning tires and blocked roads teeming with demonstrators could be seen in videos posted to social media. Last month, the Jordanian government introduced an income tax bill aimed at widening the tax base, increasing tax brackets and penalizing tax evaders. The tax reform bill, which is driven by the International Monetary Fund, aims to reduce public debt to 96% of gross domestic product to 77% by 2021. Members of Parliament have vowed to reject it, refusing to vote on the bill. Trade unions rejected the bill and called for the general strike. To Gaza now, where militants fired 5 projectiles toward Israel last Saturday night, according to Israel's Defense Force, in apparent violation of a ceasefire agreed to by Hamas and Islamic Jihad earlier in the week. The Israeli military said 4 of the launches were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome aerial defense system, while the 5th landed in Gaza. In response to initial fire by militants, which consisted of 2 rockets, the Israeli Air Force launched strikes on 10 Hamas targets in Gaza. Among the targets were 2 munitions manufacturing and storage sites, as well as a military compound. The exchange of fire comes less than 5 days after the biggest flare-up in fighting since the end of the last war between Israel and Hamas 4 years ago. Argentina has called off a pre-World Cup exhibition match which Israel following political pressure and claims of threats towards players, sparking outrage from Israeli officials. Argentina's players decided to pull out of the game, which was scheduled to take place in Jerusalem yesterday, in solidarity with superstar teammate Lionel Messi. Argentinian President Mauricio Macri said on Wednesday, Palestinian officials were outraged by the decision to hold the match in the contested city. Last Sunday, Palestinian Football Association chief Jibril Rajoub launched a campaign against the Argentine Football Association, and specifically Messi, calling on people to burn jerseys of the football star. Rajoub said in a statement, the AFA's acceptance to play with Israel in Jerusalem have reminded us all of how Israel uses sports as a tool to whitewash its actions. It was unclear if the Palestinian campaign prompted Messi to quit the fixture. Argentina striker Gonzalo Higuain called the decision the right thing in an interview on ESPN. He said, "We left it behind us. Good health and common sense come first, and we think the right thing was not to go." An AFA official defended Argentina's decision to suspend the match, saying it was the right thing to do. To health news. And the death toll from the outbreak of Nipah virus has risen to 16 in the southern Indian state of Kerala. According to Kerala's Department of Health and Family Welfare, more than 230 people have been tested for the virus, with state officials confirming 18 people have contracted it. All 18 were hospitalized and quarantined, with the last 2 currently in recovery. Rajiv Sandandan, Chief Secretary for the department, said, "The other 2 are alive and kicking. Their blood is totally clear of the Nipah virus. The recovering patients are still in quarantine and are able to speak to their family over the phone." A final set of tests is being conducted to ensure there is no trace of infection. The state is close to declaring that the infection has been cleared. The first cases were reported on May 19 in a family from the district of Kozhikode, with India's health ministry deploying a response team, and the World Health Organization alerted. Fruit bats, which are natural hosts of Nipah virus, were found in an unused well near the family's house, along with rabbits being bred that had recently died. According to WHO, between 4 and 14 days may elapse between the infection and a patient's first symptoms. Initial symptoms of the virus can include headaches and drowsiness, and patients can slip into a coma within days, according to the US Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Other symptoms may include acute respiratory syndrome, where the lungs cannot get enough oxygen to the body, and fatal encephalitis, an inflammation of the brain. And in sport, Hope Solo is one of America's most decorated soccer players, a record-breaking goalkeeper who has made over 200 appearances for her country. But the 36-year-old, whose contract was terminated by US Soccer in 2016 for conduct that is counter to the organization's principles, has said she'd prefer the 2026 tournament to be awarded to a more deserving country than her homeland, which is jointly bidding with Mexico and Canada. North America is up against Morocco to earn the right to host football's showpiece event in 2026, with a decision to be made on June 13 in Moscow. Under the North America proposal, 60 games in 2026 would be held in the US, which last hosted a World Cup in 1994, including everything from the quarterfinals onwards, while Mexico and Canada would host 10 games each. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Mira Gerges from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night.